I sent you some emails this morning. Go ahead and open them up. We're looking at a bib today. We're looking at 2 bibs today. Neither about Vonnegut or Jarvis, which is what I was hoping for. We're going to today, finally, move from the whole bibs business to body paragraph, bonanza. Do you guys need help?
No offense, but screw those bibs.
Well, in a week from now, you're going to be happy you have them. I mean it.
I don't think I am.
Well,
They're pretty bad.
I don't know, man. Not having them would be rough.
I'll say, I don't
in my
know if I
opinion.
did right.
Yeah, I don't think I did.
Well, hopefully we will elucidate that today. That's all you're trying to do, man.
Oh, yeah.
Real talk. What's up, guys? You're killing me. Yeah. It's all good. It's just, well, I mean, you know. All right. Does everybody have it up? Great. What we're looking at, as I said, not Vonnegut, not Jarvis, right? It's my sincere hope at this stage you are at least somewhat comfortable with those 2 texts. And I say that because mainly what I want to do today, we're going to get these 2 texts up on the board here in a bit, and we're going to try to draw connections between Vonnegut and Jarvis. We're going to actually sketch out a couple body paragraphs. As I say, we're going to move from these awful bibs, I guess, to the paper, which will be better. All right, so what do we have? The first one, I believe this is the first one. War will end. That's or will war ever end? That's the first one, yes? Yeah. Cool. All right. All I'm really interested in, we're not trying to critique these like we would in a typical workshop. These are not body paragraphs, right? These are notes. So, especially in that first one, there's kind of a lot of typos and errors and stuff like that. Navigate that as best you can, okay? But we're not sweating that. What I want you to do to the best of your ability, what ideas, what arguments are they trying to pull out of this text? If you see a place where they try to make a connection to another text, for sure note that as well. But that's all we're worried about, ideas and arguments. Read through this for a minute. We're going to talk about it. Go. I sent you guys an email. You want to open it up? Anybody need more time? Okay, you're good. All right, let's talk about it.
Wait, I have a question.
Sure.
Is this a body paragraph or a bib?
This is a bib.
Okay.
I mean, it's 3 paragraphs, but it's a bib.
I
Yeah.
was just confused a little bit.
Okay. We again, hopefully by the end of today, we'll clear up some of the lingering questions you guys might have. You're good. To begin with, ideas, arguments from Horgan, which is a hell of a last name. I mean, not this guy's fault, but Horgan. What do you guys think? Specific claims. If you were to look for, and we are, specific claims in a bib, where might be one of the best places to start? Specific ideas, specific claims. Where should you maybe go?
The quotes.
Very good. That's clutch. The quotations. So in these last 2 paragraphs in particular, what ideas we have a couple. What ideas do we have? Claims do we have down here? And if you're not sure, by God, I'll just accept reading the quotations at me.
I said humanity will always be at war.
Yeah, which paragraph is that in? Second?
That's the first one.
First one. All right. Now, let's get a couple things out of the way. Due to some of the phrasing, I'm not entirely clear if the student is reading this book they're talking about, The Expanse, or if that's like the author in the article. I'm not super clear. But I just want to say, if it's the student, don't tell me about what's on your bookshelf, right? Like, let's not do that. Yeah, to me though, I kind of wonder, like I understand why they're quoting that. That makes sense, especially thinking about Vonnegut. All these little quotations in this first paragraph here, they're just finding ways to restate that first one. War fatalism pervades our culture, right? And I think, at least I suspect, that they don't want to talk about that first quotation because maybe they're not super comfortable with some of those words. To wit, the hell does that mean? Does anybody know what fatalism actually means? It's easier than you think.
That's the idea of fate
Yeah.
playing a role in our lives.
You believe in fate. You're a fatalist. Yeah. So war fatalism, what are we talking about there? That's pretty easy, right? Maybe it's not. Huh?
We're fated to always be at war.
Yeah. And again, we've talked about this a little bit with Vonnegut, but to put it in that way, they say pervades our culture. That kind of means it seeps into and through our culture. There's no escaping it, right? It's kind of everywhere. I'm inclined to agree, right? But if we were to talk about these quotations, how I want you guys to try to talk about quotations, that does not go away. You got to focus on details. So war fatalism, I think, is worth further consideration. And this idea that it pervades our culture, that it's everywhere. Cool. We'll leave that up for a minute. I was trying to decide. Let's fill in the board, and then we'll go back to some of these. Other ideas, claims, interesting moments from the bib. Like there's a related idea, but I think it's different enough to warrant going on the board as well. Head down 5 minutes in, that's a bad sign.
So the next one he talks about free will.
Yeah,
It's
what's
the opposite idea.
well, it's this quotation, if we think war will never end, we are unlikely to try to end it. And again, that's obviously related to this idea of fatalism, because if you believe in fate, then you're Billy, right? There's no point in worrying about it, thinking about it, you just go about your business. But I like how you put it. We are sort of pointing out if free will is a thing, and I think a lot of us like to think that it is, well then shouldn't we be able to apply it to something like war? Like, right? We should at least have the discussion. And it seems like we often don't. Sure. That works. Now, I'm trying to save us a bit of time because we have a lot of really fun stuff to get to. I'm going to stop saying that because I'm just messing with you. That's really most of the big ideas here, right? We have summary of the article, which is helpful for the student. I was, just to be totally clear with you guys, I was a little worried about this article initially. Not that you can't go to a place like Scientific American, but this Horgan guy, it sounds like almost like he's just out talking to people on the street or something. I was kind of like, what is? But then we get into some actual ideas, some actual arguments. So to maybe answer your question from before class, if whatever you end up using is actually making arguments, is actually making claims that require proof or explanation, you're probably okay. This one's probably okay. All right. Same deal with the next one, Bell and Bayless. Read over that, it'll take a couple minutes. Big ideas, claims that you can spot. We're gonna talk about it. Anybody need more time? You do. Here. All right, let's talk about it. There are a couple more claims in this one, I think. But of course, I'm interested to hear what you think. Big ideas, claims, arguments in this second bit. What do you think? Where could we start, given how we approached the last one? Good. Now, again, to give you guys a couple pointers, my first evidence will be, I know they're doing that just to like technically incorporate it into a sentence, but the spirit of the Bib assignment, you know, I would rather you give me some context, right? Because that's going to help you out. But anyway, industries have combined to promote violent masculinity. Men and boys are taught that violence is the key to earning respect as masculine figures. And they go on to talk about it a little bit. I also worry, we're not really digging into these quotations. We're kind of just talking around them. You know, we're for sure talking about ideas that are related, but we don't really talk about the quotations themselves. So I say that to say, if anything from these paragraphs helps you guys think about this stuff, that's cool. But also, you could just read the quotations themselves, and we can talk about those. But I'll leave it up to you. What do you guys think about that section? What are we trying to talk about, do you think?
Well, basically trying to say that violence is contained in war.
Yeah.
That's really the only way to earn your manhood is to do something violent, something like that.
So there is this notion, and it's not like this is a super new idea, but it's worth pointing out, that like not just masculinity, but the like more violent aspects of it would have an obvious link to something like war, you know. But of course, the quotation itself says more than that, right? Like, and we had to play that fun game show that I have you guys play occasionally. Industries have combined to promote violent masculinity. Men and boys are taught that violence is the key to earning respect as masculine figures. Are there any other terms or phrases in that quotation that we should also maybe highlight? Might be worth considering. You don't have to know why, by the way. I'm just curious. Because we've talked about violent masculinity. We've talked about, kind of respect and how that's part of it, Is there anything we're missing? Anything we haven't drawn the reader's attention to, I suppose, in the quotation?
Well, when I say industries, like,
Yeah.
what exactly, like, what industry?
Now, this is where context would help, to be fair. But we could probably fill in some of those gaps. What do you guys think they're maybe talking about here? Industries. What kind of industries?
Like movies or like video games.
Maybe. I'm willing to bet. Yeah. And God help us if we can't talk about movies in this paper, right? But essentially what they're drawing our attention to in movies and video games and all these other things, this sort of masculine narrative that we have, right? And you could argue it maybe gets us to this, but this all on its own is a thing that's worth thinking about. We do have an idea, even still in 2022, of like what makes a man, how we should define it, how they should behave or appear, right? Generally speaking. And now we're saying that industries are involved, which is interesting. All right. Last paragraph down there. Increasing size. Man, this made me think of my childhood so hard, by the way. Increasing size and extreme muscularity of contemporary action figures and superheroes, as well as the increasing size and power of firearms, to demonstrate that there has been a ratcheting up of what it takes to be considered a masculine figure. What are they talking about?
Like toys.
Yeah. Like, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Dude, our action figures were beefy. They were really big. That was a lot of fun. But also, as a dad of two boys who were like getting old enough for me to try to have a little bit of fun at Christmas, like what am I going to get these kids? I don't know if you've checked recently, Nerf guns are bananas. Like it's kind of crazy what some of these Nerf guns will do. Yeah. And they're for sure, like they come in packs of like, you got the crazy ones that they've always had, but then they also come with like a sidearm, and I'm like, it's called that, so the kid can have like a backup fucking handgun. You're like, I don't know if that's okay. Some of this, it feels too, but it feels too real. It feels a little too close for my 5 and 7 year old. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's kind of, you're like, ugh. All that said, that's kind of the backdrop I think we're talking about in this quotation. What are we saying? Like, again, what do you think this quotation is after? With the points it's trying to make, or again, significant terms or phrases you think from this quotation?
We're talking about like unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Set for people, like,
Well, and how they've been increasing. Yeah? They say ratcheting up. the hyperbolization, I can't even say it, hyperbolization of expectations, right? That's how you noun a verb. You guys don't care. All right. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. The only other thing we could maybe add, it's not as specific because it's part of their summary, right? But this business about tells readers being a man is almost like a disguise, which is maybe true. I mean, I haven't read the article, so I don't know. But the term guise isn't necessarily just a disguise. Technically speaking, a guise is just something you put on. So it could be a disguise. It could be more properly defined as a uniform. I'm just saying definitions matter, right? You should be careful. But the prevailing idea is that this masculine narrative is something that can be worn. That's what they seem to be trying to communicate in this article. All right. What I want to do now, as best we can, this is our menu to start with, right? We got 2 big ideas from Corgan. We got 3 from Bell. Anywhere you want to go. So for instance, we could connect something from here to here first, if you want, if you feel more comfortable doing that. But at some point, we got to try to move to these. And again, it's my hope you guys know these well enough at this stage that you can just fill these in based upon your memory, based upon your notes. We're all taking notes. But whatever that looks like for you. So anything from one of these, I want to do that spider web business for a second. What do you guys think? Take your time. We got plenty of it.
What was the question again?
What we've been doing this whole time, and we've been building to this moment. This is the climax. Sad. We got to connect any one of these ideas, either to each other, if you guys are more comfortable with that, or we got to find something from Vonnegut that connects to any of this, something from Jarvis that connects to any of this. Anything at all.
War fatalism and the destiny stuff
From Vonnegut? Okay. Let's get a little more specific, just because he talks about it a lot, right? Like what I'm trying to get you guys to think about now is this one even is literally a quotation, right? When you build body paragraphs, just like we did in paper 1, you're going to need specific evidence, you're going to need quotations. So this is a quotation. When it comes to Vonnegut, we got to give ourselves like a scene or a moment that we could go back and look to and potentially find a quotation, okay? But when it comes to destiny, fate, we got a pretty extensive inventory we could draw from, right? Can you guys think of any moment in Vonnegut that might somehow tie to this when we're thinking about destiny, free will, fate, all that business?
was the training thing, relatives, what ideas.
Okay. So, trains as people, and then of course the way we talked about that when it comes to the rails themselves, how you're always on a track, you can't really diverge, you certainly don't get to choose, and that would be how fate would work, right?
That's why Vonnegut mechanic classes everything, because they're kind of programmed to follow a certain line.
So the upshot of this is it also gets us to a conversation about dehumanization,
Yeah.
right? For sure. Can we go anywhere from here? This idea of dehumanization. Could we go here, or God help us here? We're talking about making people into less of people, right? Less human somehow.
Yeah, there's a bunch in Jarvis, for example. If you wanted to go back to the sort of train thing, it's like it combines all. You just consider the train as one bodily function. You put in food, it comes
poop.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said.
Shit, piss, and language. Yeah. Jarvis talks about that specifically. Yeah.
He talks about it, several times in the thing.
I kind of wonder if we would want to, huh?
He also talks about the Nazi, like, the
What?
Nazis and everything.
What about the Nazis?
And then I went back on the train thing.
Well, what I worry about with doing the train thing, I'm not going to say you can't do it, but understand this. If you're already talking about, like a quotation from Vonnegut about the trains, and you say good things about it, like we just started to, okay? If you then go to Jarvis and say, she also talks about the trains,
Yeah.
you're not going to have a lot to say. Do you know what I mean? Because you've already done it. And I'm not going to say you can't do it. It would make your job harder potentially. So I was really interested when there's not a better way to say this, started talking about Nazis. Whatever it is she said about that, I don't actually recall in this moment.
Something I can't really point it out.
My brain goes to Billy and Lindsay's wedding night, because that's, Jarvis talks about that.
What did she say about it? Do you
She
remember?
brings up her assembling the parts and how that was like she's being
Yeah.
machinery basically. She's
Well, so, okay, I know what you're talking about. All right, so this idea gets us to Jarvis's discussion of Valencia and how she gets mechanized, right? Which, of course, is pretty plain to see she's being dehumanized in that moment. Got that, okay? But also, her point there is this, when I read it, this deeply upsetting way to talk about people, but also like the creation of a baby, right? Like she was assembling the parts of the future Green Beret, says something like that. And Jarvis says that basically this is Vonnegut taking not war, but Valencia's idea of it, right? And how that leads to literally a soldier in Vietnam, right? Because that's what they're talking about, and that's kind of what's all in her brain. And obviously she's going to raise the kid with like her ideas about all this stuff. But she's saying Vonnegut's kind of trying to make the point that it's happening right then, right?
It's also like the idea that women pass on like their ideals to the
Yeah.
baby. So
Yeah.
It's like she's taking away his free will. She's making him a Green Beret.
Oh, you're getting into a whole thing. All right, slow down for 1 second. Hang on to that for 1 second. So
I'm trying to circle back.
no, then we're gonna pick that up in just a second. I'm trying to figure out how to sum up part of what we just said. Okay, so to recap, I understand that doesn't look like much on the board, but you're going to have quotations for pretty much, I'd say 9 times out of 10 you're going to quote rather than paraphrase, but you can paraphrase if necessary. We started with Horgan. War fatalism pervades our culture, or whatever we said, and you would have to talk about what he means, okay? You'd have to work with each quotation. But in working with that quotation, I think we pretty easily got to trains represented as people, but of course we considered that according to fate, which is a pretty easy connection here, right? But it also takes us to the other part of that conversation. If we talk about fate as a thing that's concrete and sort of unavoidable, well then it takes away what we consider to be our humanity, right? It makes us into machines. That got us to Jarvis's discussion of Valencia, who is clearly represented as a machine, which is dehumanizing, but also gets us to this idea of the power of this war narrative and how it can actually lead to real world decisions, life-altering decisions, right? That's a paragraph. That's gonna take a lot. That's gonna be a paragraph, okay? Now what can happen, and what you like immediately leapt to as stop you, okay? In the best case situation, you might have more to say, or it might lead to other ideas. In this particular case, that's plenty. So what you were starting to do is start another body paragraph. So we're gonna do that now, okay? That's why I had to like stop you. So if you, it may be difficult, can you try to finish your thought that I kind of cut you off?
The
Yeah, so Valencia was taking away, what was the son's name? I already forgot.
I don't even remember.
Robert?
Robert. Well remembered.
Taking away Robert's free will by basically she's subconsciously imposing her manifestation ability into the creation of it.
All right. So this is like our transition, but it leads us to a separate related idea. So basically, these narratives are so strong that what choice did Robert really have? And again, I don't think it's an accident, Jarvis would say. I don't think it's an accident that Vonnegut refers to the kid, the not even really a baby yet, as the future Green Beret, right? Like, again, we're evoking this idea of fate, the absence of free will, but we're doing it through just how completely overwhelming these narratives can be. Cool. All right. We're trying this now. This is the beginning of a second body paragraph. So we got to try to connect this to anything. Anything from Vonnegut, anything we've listed from either of these sources. What do you think? That these narratives are so strong that they override Robert's free will. We can't really say he has free will because the narratives are so powerful.
Maybe in Bell,
Did you have something? Sorry. I didn't do that one. That wasn't my fault.
Okay, so in Bell, talks about the masculine narrative.
Yeah.
You can also take it to where, like, so Valencia sees Billy as this, warrior, basically. So of course she wants the same for her son. She wants her son to reflect who she believes is.
What she assumes Billy to be.
Yeah. So basically, she's taking that narrative that she's put on Billy, and putting it on Robert as well.
Okay. Well, I'm not quite. So let's try to go sequentially. I think you could do it either way. Let's go here first, and then we'll go back to what it sounds like you want to do with Vonnegut. How does Bell talk about this masculine narrative? We may have to remind ourselves.
Can you say that one more time?
How does Bell talk about this masculine narrative? To be totally honest, I don't even remember. She talks about these industries and how they're promoting this kind of masculinity.
With the movies?
Oh, yeah, that's what it was. Movies and video games, we said, is what the industries are. Okay. So that's the story we have, right?
And the characters were Frank Sinatra and John Wayne.
Ah, you're trying to get us to marry there. We could do that instead. That could work as well.
I mean,
No, that's fine. This is fine. It's okay. This is going to be a fuck show anyway. Like, it's not...
It was like portrayed as like these really like heroic men in the movies. I forgot.
Yeah?
One of them was like something Iwo Jima or something like that.
Sands of Iwo Jima.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah? Okay, so to be totally clear, this we've talked about. This we haven't quite dealt with yet, but we're saying not just that we have a narrative around masculinity, because we do, but in the quotation we're saying that almost like we add fuel to the fire, if that's fair, like in our movies, our video games, when it comes to what we're telling people they should be or should want to be, right? And that's kind of Bell's idea. Then we take it back to Vonnegut. We could talk more about Valencia, but I don't mind going to a different part of the book simply because we've talked about her quite a bit to this stage, right? And we almost have to get Mary in here somewhere. Mary's and again, just to keep score here, what is her point about movies? She says Frank Sinatra, John Wayne, dirty old men, but what's her point about them? What do they do, these movies?
They like make the world look better than it actually
They make it look glamorous,
Yeah,
she says.
glamour out there.
Yeah. And they do. Old movies especially, but even a lot of the new ones, man. We like to think our movies are more realistic, I think, than some of the... Because, to be fair, older movies like Sands of Iwo Jima are basically propaganda. That's kind of what she's talking about. But, I don't know, man. Most action movies I think of, it looks pretty sweet. Like, it looks pretty awesome, you know. Or video games, dude. Call of Duty is fun as shit to just stab people, you know? It's fun to stab people.
I said, I'm not gonna go to the war.
Well, but the idea is not, like, it's not a one-for-one.
I got it.
But you get into this conversation about, like, being desensitized, you know? Like, I've done stuff in video games that doesn't bother me at all, but then I've done it, and I'll hear one of my kids go, yeah, and I'll go, no. You know? Like, I was playing Dishonored a couple months ago, and that's a stealth game, and what that means is you mostly sneak around and snap necks. Like, that's mostly what you do. It's cool to jump off a building and stab a dude in the neck.
It's fun.
But it's also, it's kind of messed
I
up.
say, do you really want to be playing that from a 5-year-old?
Yeah, exactly, and that's a real question.
Yeah.
And her point, I think it's a woman here. Her point, and definitely Mary's point, would be probably not. Yeah, what's up?
It's off topic, but in
Okay.
Dishonor, you don't have to kill anyone at all.
You don't have to.
I just asked.
Well, look, I'm a dad with a full-time job. I don't have time to, like, memorize patrol routes. I'm killing some people. Anyway. All right. So at this stage, I didn't draw our line.
And the fact that, like, in Jarvis, they was talking about how they had the booth set up outside the booth here. Like, that's crazy. That's
Well,
like, out of everything we read, that's like the thing that's just like...
That always sticks with me.
That's the biggest thing that stuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Like, just the fact that, because, like, I mean, coming out of a movie, you're pretty hyped up. Like, especially if it's like a good movie with like a really
Yeah.
good, you're like, let's freaking go, baby.
No, it's real. It's a real
And
thing.
you come out and you're like, oh, you can be in the army, then you can do just like a movie. Like, that's just crazy.
We could consider that. They're Marine recruiters. What's up? So what we've decided to do here, which I don't necessarily mind, we take this is a fictional story, right? This is fiction. This is somebody's ideas that we relate back to fiction. But at the end here, we go back to Jarvis and say, it's not all make-believe. There's real-world implications. I mean, if her dad saw a group of Marine recruiters outside this movie, that's not like the only time they did that, you know, like this. And again, I wouldn't be surprised if it was terribly successful. I do think that this body paragraph would have to end here. Again, like, you're gonna have to talk about a quotation about Robert assembling the Green Beret, I think it is, relating that to the masculine narrative and the kind of power of that, which Mary is worried about. And by the way, if we're talking about Mary in terms of war and masculinity and the narratives around both, we're kind of combining them, we could argue, with Mary, right? So I'll put, for instance, both narratives for her. And then we take that and say, this is like a real world sort of anecdote about how that gets used. Because that's really what's gross about it. They're using the power of those narratives against 18, 19-year-old kids. You know? I'm not even thinking about you right now. I'm thinking about me. When I was 18 or 19, I was a fucking idiot. I was a complete idiot. I think they know that. That's 2 body paragraphs right there. And by the way, if you do work with the quoted material like you are supposed to, you know, thinking about details, explaining ideas to me, to get to another piece of specific evidence, these are going to be pretty fleshed out. These are going to be longer paragraphs, okay? Honest to God, that would take up 1.5 pages probably, what we just did, after you're done with it, okay? This is how you build the paper. This is what I've been talking about. These bibs, it looks like that. Any questions at this stage about any of that? Yeah.
So, I mean, I kind of got a better understanding of what a bib is. So you
Okay.
just take things that are like ideas out of the article and you just connect them back to what everything was written.
Yeah, and again, I can't maybe iterate enough. They're for you. So whatever quotation you think you could use or whatever idea. So even when it comes to Jarvis, you're not going to use the whole article. Like, she says a lot of things, but based especially upon maybe what other articles you found, what most interests you out of Vonnegut, what are you going to take from Jarvis? What makes sense for the paper you're trying to build? But yeah.
Okay.
I had like the opposite idea. Like, I don't know what I was thinking of doing. I was
Okay.
thinking like a summary almost.
Well, that's the first half.
Like,
You do need that.
It makes sense now.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you missed last class, didn't you?
Class before last.
Okay. What is that? Might have fucked you up a little bit, right? Like,
Probably.
okay. But yeah, this is what we're trying to do. And by the way, again, these two you kind of, I think, have to have. The ones that are not Vonnegut and Jarvis, you kind of have to have. One, because you absolutely have to find sources on your own. Like, that's non-negotiable. But we talked about this for weeks. We've talked about this enough, I would hope. Worst case scenario, you could use your memory or whatever, or a buddy, talk it out with them. But then you just start making connections. And if you explain each one of these lines, these are several sentences. That's what this is. You explain to me what idea we're talking about here, how it links to this. You explain the ideas here, how it links to this. That's how you build them.
Yeah, this would have been great. Like,
We can't do it until we do the research.
yeah, no, I got you. But like, up until this point,
Yeah.
right now,
Okay.
I hadn't like I was just had no idea what I was doing. I was just talking.
Agreed.
Well, we know now.
Yeah, I said I got her.
That little chart there is very, very helpful.
Great.
And all the ones.
Yeah. The other point I want to make to you guys very quickly. These paragraphs are going to feel different because they're going to be multiple texts. There's going to be multiple pieces of evidence, okay? But they're going to be built in the same way. And we will talk about this more next time because you have body paragraphs due, and we're going to workshop it, and but to prepare you for that, I want to review very quickly here, I guess. 3 parts of a body paragraph. What are they? Oh, dear sweet Lord. Dear sweet God of body paragraphs. Oh.
What's the word? Resolution. Just explain the claim evidence. Analyzing.
Okay. So, topic sentence, which is the main idea of the paragraph. It's your argument, whatever it might be, right? You sum it up here. Then you have evidence. Then you have analysis. The difference, there's going to be a couple in this paper. Number one, topic sentence is going to be a struggle. I'm just going to let you know. You're going to have usually 3, I would say at most 4, but 3 is a pretty good number of quotations in these body paragraphs because you're moving between texts. You're going to stand back and go, how am I supposed to, in a sentence, try, but it will be difficult right now. I'm just letting you know. But go ahead and still try. The rest of the paragraph is actually going to be several iterations of this, right? This is our maybe first piece of evidence. So we're going to build it into a sentence. We're going to cite it. We're going to take a couple sentences to talk about what it even means, right? What argument she's making. And then we're going to transition from our conversation about that, the specific ideas we raise, to this. Same deal. Integrated into a sentence, quick quotation, citation, leads us to this conversation about fate because of the rails, and that's pretty obvious. But it also gets us to this idea of dehumanization. Now we're linking it to Valencia, how Jarvis talks about it, right? Like, so you're going to do this several times in each body paragraph. And your analysis isn't just of the quotation, it's also transitioning from that quotation to the next one. Does that make sense? Okay. So for your homework for next time, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Is it just one? I can't remember. Yeah, it says just one. One body paragraph. I would do some of this first. Do a couple. You might like the very first one you do, but still, do a couple. Just see what happens. Usually, and I think this started to happen to us, once you get going, you kind of get some momentum. You can kind of start running with it. Who knows? Best case scenario, you might sketch out your entire paper, right, before you even start writing it. But give yourself some run on this, and then pick one, whichever one you feel strongest about, or you feel like you could really do. Write that paragraph up. Do your best to get all the parts. Again, that guy will be hard. That'll be due next time. Sound good? What time is it, by the way?
11:50.
That went so much faster than I thought it would. Okay. Obviously, I know you guys know we don't meet on Thursday. I'm not surprising anybody, right? Really?
Yeah. I mean, I knew it was fall break, but like that.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I'm glad I brought it up. Yeah. We fall break is Thursday, Friday, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't meet on Thursday, so you have more time. If it were me, and I can't speak for everybody, okay? If it were me, and I'm a nerd, I'd probably try to write a couple paragraphs, to be honest with you. You only owe me one for Tuesday, okay? But I keep saying it, anything you can do to help the future you out, I mean, because honest to God, again, these paragraphs are going to be longer. If you write 3 of these or so, that's going to be most of your paper. So I'll leave it to you like that. Anybody have any questions before I let you go? I know. I got to stop saying it that way. All right. I'll see you next week. Thank you guys.